Hi, it's Jackleen. Today is March 27th. I'm recording this on March 27th, and we're going to talk about the Aries solar eclipse that is coming up on March 29th, on Saturday. So, we are between eclipses right now, and that's something I like to call the magical gateway, but I think that might be a little bit of magical thinking because it's often the crap gateway as well. And I guess the real magic is making magic, making transformation out of the crap that happens between eclipses. And there's a lot going on in my life, in your life, I'm sure. And on the national stage, we just had a big disclosure event that Jill and I talked about a couple weeks ago when we spoke about the lunar eclipse on the 13th, the Virgo lunar eclipse. Well, that one had my name written all over it because my Virgo moon was very close to where that eclipse happened, and I thought for a while I was going to get off scot-free. That did not happen. All kinds of stuff came up, but it came up for me to look at, and that's what your stuff came up for. And hopefully you did receive a few, I want to say, nicely delivered eclipse lessons that you could use to show you how to be more effective going forward. How about we put it that way? Anyway, so let's talk about this lovely solar eclipse in Aries. And it actually is lovely. I do tell you, and I mentioned this on the podcast with Jill a couple of weeks ago, I do tend to romanticize a new moon, and a solar eclipse is just a new moon on steroids. So I tend to think it's going to be all rainbows and unicorns. It is not, because it is an eclipse. It does come with a punch. And I've found that new moons do have their, it's the dark moon, right? Once I got my car stolen because it was so dark. I was doing an actual new moon circle and left my car outside as one does when you go somewhere, and I came back and it wasn't there. Probably because it was a new moon, right? Had another situation with a cat where she was returned to me, and she's supposed to be a wild cat, and that didn't go well, but we've made a truce. So anyway, whatever happens around the new moon, you can deal with it. Even if it's a solar eclipse, you can deal with it. The worst is probably over, particularly if you know what your lunar eclipse lesson was. Okay, so let's talk about this. The Sabian symbol for that lunar eclipse was that government building. I was going to say a shuttered government building, but it was a government building with a flag at half mast, which a lot of government buildings are being closed, and the government in a way is kind of at half mast in terms of what's going on right now. So you can say that was pretty accurate for the lunar eclipse. For this one, it's about a teacher putting up new symbols for old things. So it's kind of the beginning of a new cycle. I'm paraphrasing here, new symbols for old traditions, old experiences. So it's kind of relearning things from a new place, from where we are now. So this is going to be a really interesting one. I always like to show my little chart here. We have, I get all turned around over here. There we go. A stellium, two stelliums. The stelliums mean a bunch of planets together. Well, I say there are two because there's one in early Aries and there's one in late Pisces, and they're sitting together and blending all their energies. But all the other aspects are really nice. So we can expect a lot of growth, particularly if we have metabolized our eclipse lessons from the last one. Okay, so learn your eclipse lessons and put that learning into practice. That's the best thing I can tell you. If you don't know what your lessons were, if you were lucky enough to kind of skate or get off scot-free, or just have a bunch of little things happen that you didn't see were connected, we can talk about that, because I can see based on where the eclipse happened in your chart and what planets it aspected, what your lessons might be, what it is that you need to learn. Okay, so, but we probably got a bunch of that. So we are also in a Mercury retrograde and a Venus retrograde. Now, the Venus retrograde is a little bit lesser. I don't usually worry about the Venus retrograde. Sometimes it slows down money. Sometimes this happened to me. I'm going to just confess this. The relationship stuff, it harks back to the past. Your partner brings up old stuff, like puts it all on the table. And so you've got to, or you do that, or, it's sort of a retro in relationships, in love and in money. So, and when it's paired with a Mercury retrograde, which we know can be difficult, then that's where we have the problem. Communications, which is everything. Everything is communications, right? So that suffers. Someone says zig and you zag, vice versa, right? And so we are in that until April 7th, the Mercury retrograde, and then just give it a little longer, give it another week. Let's just say till the 14th to get out of its storm period. So there'll still be some confusion and stuff. And speaking of the 7th, that's the day I tell people heads up. Okay, that's when Mercury retrograde likes to be the trickiest, when it's turning around, when it's going direct. I always hark back to the election of 2000, right? Where there was the hanging chads and all that. That was a day that Mercury, I think, was going direct after a retro. So things will happen on those days, and that's why you have to be extra careful. I am not a Mercury retrograde alarmist, as I've said before. I'm more of a void moon alarmist. So find a way to know when the moon is void, of course. I wouldn't do anything during that time for the most part. No surgery, no getting married. If you get a haircut, make sure it's the same haircut you always get. Dye job or anything, make sure it's just something, and it still might go wrong. Void, of course, moons I don't like. Mercury retrograde, you can repair things that went wrong in a Mercury retrograde. You had a problem in your relationship, with a bit of apology and groveling or whatever it is. You can restore what was seemingly lost. You can restore your hard drive if it somehow vanished or disappeared. You can painstakingly probably get back all your files if it happened during a Mercury retrograde. That's a general rule of thumb. Whereas during a non-Mercury retrograde, maybe it is lost, right? So I think that reversible quality of the Mercury retrograde is, sometimes it gives us a little blessing. And sometimes some of the inconveniences turn into synchronicities. Sometimes you get good from that. Again, fertilizer. So we're dealing with a lot of fertilizer right now. Things are going to get better, I think, almost immediately after this solar eclipse. Give it a couple days, right? Because eclipse, it's a big, you're throwing a bowling ball into the swamp. All the little crud creatures come up. So just know that that's happening. One thing I want to say about this, most things are positive. Mars is aspected well. You can begin to do things and put things out there and begin new things. Again, use these dates that I mentioned with the Mercury retrograde. Oh, Venus is retro until the 13th. I don't make a big deal of that. Once Mercury's out and Venus is out, again, it's gonna, around the 13th, 14th, things are gonna be better. And the one thing that I would suggest to not fall under now is like, everything's fine now. Don't fall into delusion. We have Mercury, retrograde Mercury, trapped in this solar eclipse chart, which, if you think of this chart as, it's kind of like a dream catcher or a gong that you bang, and it resounds over the next month, particularly the next couple of weeks until we have the full moon. So don't fall for anyone's BS, even if it's what you really want to hear, okay? Don't paint things with the rose-colored glasses, because Neptune is at that degree of tears, at that very final degree of Pisces, and then at 0 degrees Aries, we have that retro Mercury, and they're just coming together. That's what's happening. And so that's illusion and communication and what people are saying. Don't believe it, okay? Someone tells you they're turning over a new leaf, wait to see it, okay? Wait for the actual hard evidence. But it's a good time to turn over a new leaf shortly after this Aries solar eclipse, okay? Because Mars is very positively aspected. gets a little jolt from Uranus, and it gets a little jolt from Saturn. If you can structure your activities in a Saturn-like way, I always suggest using a timer. I'm going to be on for this amount of time, then I'm going to be off, do something. It's like the Pomodoro technique, 20 minutes or 20 to 25 minutes on and 5 to 6 minutes off, or even less if you're really in the flow of what you're doing. But there's a lot of productivity now. It's starting to get there again. We're a little stop-start energy with this Mercury retrograde, so just be patient with that. That was probably a lot of you have that eclipse lesson of being patient and just allowing things to happen in their own time. The more we do that, the less we need the patience. What else was I going to say about this? It just looks good. You know, we've got Pluto and Uranus, those outer planets being aspected more positively now. And I was telling Jill a couple of weeks ago on the podcast that I do think this is a sign of more unity, more people coming together and saying, okay, yeah, you know, that whole tax cuts for billionaires, maybe not. You know, how are we going to spend money? How are we going to, it's a reevaluation. That's the thing about a Venus retrograde and a Mercury retrograde, but particularly Venus is like, where are you putting your money? I mentioned this before, but it's also like, what do you value? What's really important to you? And we've got Saturn and Venus on either side of the North Node. And I look at the North Node as purpose. What is your purpose, and how are you supporting that with your time and your money? Saturn and and Venus on the other hand, the money. So Saturn is time, Venus is money, Saturn is work. Venus can be work too, but it's very enjoyable. It's very, there's an energy of, can I make this work fun? That would be a good thing to do right now. Whatever work it is that you have to do, whatever feels like drudgery, how can I make this fun? How can I break it up into smaller tasks? We talked about that a little around the Virgo lunar eclipse, because that's how Virgo works, is little smaller tasks, incremental work. So I'm trying to think if I have anything else to say here. Looking at the chart again, that 9 degrees Aries, if you have a birthday around now, hold on to your hats, right? This is going to be a wild and eventful year for you, but it's going to be a year where you can affect a lot of change. If either your sun or your moon is around that 9 degrees Aries point, you can affect a lot of personal change and even larger change within the year. So start to look at your goals again. Start to envision what you want to create within the next year, whether or not it's your birthday. It is kind of a new beginning. We just had the vernal equinox, and so that's a wonderful time to kind of have a new beginning. Take stock of the successes that you've had in the last 6 months, 3 to 6 months. You can look at it in terms of the equinoxes and the solstices, because there's 4 of those a year, and they start with the sun moving into a cardinal sign such as Aries. So we're now in Aries. The astrological new year has started. That's basically what the vernal equinox is. It's a real kind of astrological new year, starting off with the first sign, Aries. And so it is time to start moving toward what you're here to do. That's what the North Node is telling us in its placement here. And it's being positively aspected or conjunct both Saturn and Venus. So put your money where your mouth is, put your money where your values are, put your money where you want to go, put your energy, your time where you want to go, and envision that. Envision, create, live into it. So there's probably more to say about this, and I might write a little bit about it or do another video, but congratulations on getting through this this eclipse cycle, or we're almost through it. And happy Aries solar eclipse.